In today's video, let's talk about how performance is about to get a whole lot smoother on the Steam Deck by up to 31%, which is awesome. After that, let's talk about how Xbox just realized they can't beat Steam at their own game, which I think is a good thing. And finally, let's wrap up by talking about how GOG is still working on the Galaxy app for Linux, which of course is a good thing. How's it going? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. And as usual, I hope you're having a great week playing a ton of video games. Now that Halo Campaign Evolved is out of its early access period, a bunch of my friends picked it up, so I've been playing that on my Steam machine. As usual, let me know what you're playing down in the comments below. And 85% of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed, so if you're one of them, help me out by subscribing and setting your notifications to all. But with the intro out of the way, let's talk about how performance is about to get a whole lot smoother on the Steam Deck. I'm going to tell you right up front that this is really complicated, and I'm going to do my absolute best to break it down simply, but a Linux developer named David Vernett has figured out how to patch Linux in a way that improves 1% lows. Before I explain what the patch does, I'll explain what 1% lows are because they're really bad. So say you limit your game to 60 FPS and the 1% lows are 25. That means 1% of the time your frame rate is dropping all the way down to 25 FPS. And even though 1% of the time doesn't really seem like a whole lot for that to happen, it results in stutters. So what you want is that number, the 1% low number, to be as close as humanly possible, if not matched with whatever you're limiting the FPS to. So if you're locking a game at 60 FPS and it's dropping into the high 50s, that's a sign that you should probably limit it to like 40 or 45 FPS on your Steam Deck, because you can clear that easily, which means the 1% lows will be higher, right? Like if you're running a game at 60, it's dropping into the 50s, that's a good sign that the 1% lows are probably pretty terrible. So even though it says it's running at 50 FPS or 55 or 58, it's not going to feel very smooth because A, the frame rate is dropping, and B, you're going to see a lot of stutters from 1% low. So you got to find an FPS number to limit to that's right in that healthy middle ground to keep things as smooth as possible, especially if you're like me and you're super sensitive to frame rate fluctuations. And as someone who has a lot of different PCs and plays mostly on PC, I've noticed that over the past 5 years, the Steam Deck has a weird 1% low situation that I just chalked up to it being a handheld, where in games like, I don't know, The Evil Within, a game from 2013 or 2014 that should easily run super well on the Steam Deck, when you load into new areas, when a cutscene starts, when anything new happens in the game, sometimes you would see weird little stutters that just didn't make sense. And now that I've read what this patch does, it just like lifted the veil and explained it all. Again, this is super technical, so bear with me, but what this patch does is fix the EPP situation with the P cores on the Steam Deck's APU. EPP is Energy Preference Protocol, and it basically tells your CPU's core what state to run in very fast, like multiple times a second this is happening, like hundreds of times a second this is actually happening. And at first I was like, why wouldn't you just want your Steam Deck CPU to just be in performance mode the entire time you're playing a game? And it turns out you don't want that, because it would just absolutely murder the battery life. And because it's happening so many times a second, it's actually fast enough to figure out what it should be doing. But unfortunately, up until this patch, because of the way AMD's EPP situation works, the time it took to boot up the CPU and wake it up when it needed to be utilized, that was causing bad 1% lows. So it really had nothing to do with the raw power of the Steam Deck or how the game was built or how it's running. It was all down to how the CPU was working. And the CPU patch that was developed for Linux by this developer, David Vernett, fixes that situation by making the entire process faster. So in real world tests with games that had majorly bad 1% lows like Civilization 6, it improved 1% lows by 31%. And I saw a lot of people kind of running with this and saying, oh, frame rates as a whole are about to get a whole lot better. And no, that's not happening. The average FPS will stay the same. But if you're playing a game that is able to run between like 35 and 37 FPS, so you say, hey, it's above 30, but not close enough to 40 to actually lock it at 40, and you lock it to 30, that means you'll get a much smoother 30 FPS with this patch applied, which ultimately means your gameplay will be a lot smoother on the Steam Deck, which is so awesome, because one thing I'm addicted to is finding the perfect frame rate. So in my game testing videos, you might have noticed that for games like Silent Hill 2, it can run at 60 FPS most of the time, but it drops into the high 50s, even the high 40s once in a while, and that was causing really bad 1% lows. And people were like, why did you limit it to 40 FPS? That's exactly why. I'm trying to find that happy middle ground between good graphics and good performance, and getting good performance usually means focusing on 1% 1% lows before focusing on getting the highest frame rate. So that's what I'm always trying to do. And with the Steam Machine, the 1% low situation has been largely fine. Like in some games that are really pushing it, like Halo Campaign Evolved, I had to settle for 1440p high with medium FSR at 30 FPS. That's a very smooth, consistent experience. Even though it can run at 40 most of the time, the 1% lows were garbage. So I just went with 30 and it's been an okay experience overall. Other than Unreal 5 games that aren't optimized like that though, I mean, the game I mentioned earlier, The Evil Within, was an absolute lock 60. Same goes for the vast majority of everything else I've tried, so it hasn't been that big of a deal. So that's why this patch is so laser focused on fixing the Steam Deck, and I wish it happened sooner, but I'm glad it's happening at all because it's frustrating if you're sensitive to 1% low. So hopefully this gets added into SteamOS soon. Valve is on a little bit of a lag compared to everyone else because they actually fine-tune this stuff for their hardware, but they did work in that 8GB GPU update pretty quickly, so it shouldn't be long before we see this on the Steam Deck. But moving on to the second news story here, let's talk about how Xbox just realized they can't beat Steam at their own game, and they're really majorly rethinking the way Xbox Helix works. So while none of this has really been confirmed, we do know that the plan for the Xbox Helix was not to be an Xbox console, but to be an Xbox PC running Xbox mode, which is how the Xbox ROG Ally X works. It's fine. It's nowhere near as good as SteamOS, but it is an improvement over how Windows worked before. And the weird thing is they've been talking about it, including other storefronts like the Epic Game Store, like the Uplay launcher, and of course Steam. And that's something I've never really understood. There is no reality in which that makes sense in my mind, because at that point, anyone who buys that thing will play their old Xbox games they already own. But anything from that point forward that they buy into the future, I mean, 9 times out of 10, they're just going to choose to buy the games on Steam because A, it's a better experience, B, that's where all their friends are, and C, the prices are probably going to be a whole lot better. And like, if you're buying a game on PC, most people just know intuitively that you should probably buy it through Steam. And Xbox got real world data that proves this, because apparently 75% of the people who bought the ROG Xbox Allies, the Ally White Edition and the Ally X Black Edition, subscribe to Game Pass and use that service to play most of their games. But out of the 25% who bought that thing and don't subscribe to Game Pass, 98% of them bought all their games through Steam and just completely ignored the Xbox app. So Xbox looked at that situation, looked at the PC they're building, and said, hey, we should probably rethink this. And I'm just really questioning what's going on at Xbox, because I feel like this entire situation is something a 5-year-old could figure out. Like, if you have the option to use Steam, you're probably going to use Steam. So it seems like they're just taking the longest way around possible to get to the conclusion that the Xbox Helix should probably be a console, so they can subsidize it and get the price down, because we know it's using an expensive chip that's on par with the 9070 XT. And then they can take games like Elder Scrolls 6, Gears E-Day, and Fallout 5, make them Xbox console exclusives, and then on PC still sell them on Steam, and then make the money back they lose by selling the hardware at a loss, which sounds insane, I know, because it's the only way that they've been doing it for basically the entire history of console gaming. Like, every console ever was sold at a loss because they knew, because of their lockdown ecosystem, you're going to spend money on their storefront and they'll make it back over time. It's just how things worked. And yeah, I'm glad they're reaching this conclusion, because I don't think they have anything close to a shot of taking any of Steam's user base away. And if they do take anyone, it will be such a small number that ultimately it doesn't matter. So you should probably go after Sony, who's like in the dirt right now, like with the physical games thing, the games they're actually making or lack thereof, the plethora of remakes, what they're charging for PS Plus. Like, Sony's getting dangerously close to the reputation hit that they took right before the PS3 generation when they announced the price. And if they haven't gotten close to that reputation hit, they've exceeded it. Those are the only two options. All Xbox has to do is lock this thing down, say it's going to have exclusives, include a disc drive, and say they're going to keep making physical games. Then, most importantly, show off a lot of cool stuff that's exclusive to that console. And I think that makes it viable again. Like, I gotta be real, I'm rooting for Xbox. I like PlayStation because of the games they made during the PS3 and PS4 era. They have not made games like that in a long time. I don't like the way Sony behaves and how they treat their customers, where anytime they get a taste of success, they turn into huge assholes. And I'm not going to pretend that Xbox is this holier than thou brand, but I want competition in the industry for everyone, because if competition exists, that only results in better games. So ultimately, I think this is a smart move and probably the smartest one they can make. The real key thing they have to figure out is how to subsidize the shit out of this console. Get it as damn cheap as possible, undercut PlayStation, undercut Nintendo, do what you got to do. The main thing I think they got to do is make great games that people want to play. If they make those exclusives, people will buy the hardware, just like they did with the Xbox 360 back in the day when they were eating Sony's lunch for the first 3/4 of the PS3 generation. And finally, speaking about other storefronts, a lot of people are really interested in GOG Galaxy because it was announced earlier this year that it's coming to Steam, and we just got an update through Gaming on Linux that, yeah, they're still working on the GOG Galaxy app for Linux. They hired a specialist, but they're like, look guys, this is a huge undertaking. It will come soon, but we don't have anything material to share just yet. I'm fine to wait because, you know, you can just download the Heroic game launcher, log into GOG, install and play those games on your Steam Deck in game mode with art, and it'll automatically add them for you, which is awesome. But like from a bigger picture perspective, I think it's sick that they're working on this app because it shows that there's finally enough people on Linux for these companies to really double down and start caring about it. And all it really takes is one domino to fall to really get things moving, right? Like you get GOG Galaxy, you can play old games like the Resident Evil games, you can get your DRM free copies, which have become so much more important with what Sony's doing with digital versus physical games. And if that works and you start getting people excited, then suddenly the anti-cheat companies are going to get stoked and start working harder on getting that anti-cheat that supports Linux out faster, right? Like once you get a ball rolling, it's hard to make it lose momentum, and all it's going to take is doing the extra work to get this stuff out there to start building that momentum and get that ball rolling. I've seen a lot of people really excited about this, and I am excited about what it's going to mean, but like I gotta be honest, I don't really use GOG. I have some games on there, like when I bought The Witcher 3 physically for PC, that's the last physical PC game I ever bought. It came with the GOG key, and then I gotta be honest, when it came out on Steam, they put it on sale. I bought it there because I wanted to play it on the Steam Deck. I just like having everything in one place, and I know you can add the games from the third-party store through Heroic, but like I like owning games on Steam, sue me, but I'm definitely not about yucking other people's yums. So if you've got a bunch of games on GOG and you just for some reason hate using the Heroic launcher, I'm happy for you. I'm happy that they're building out the GOG Galaxy app, and huge shout out to Gaming on Linux for getting the scoop on this one just by emailing and asking them. Great job. No one thought to do that other than you, which is honestly kind of crazy. But yeah, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. If you're one of the people who stick around till the end, huge shout out. I guess I'll let you know I'm working on horror movie content again. I just needed to talk about the situation with Halloween the game, where it looks awesome, but it's being made by Gun Media and Elphonic, and both of them have their own histories of bad reputational damage. So people are excited for Halloween, but they don't trust a single thing about it. And I'm in the middle, but I think the people who are upset are justified, and I just needed to talk about it. So if you want to see that, go subscribe to my channel, Jimmy Champagne. I have even more videos coming up, like one about the whole drama situation with the Resident Evil movie, where it looks really good and Zach Kreger's amazing, but it doesn't really look a lot like Resident Evil. I wanted to break that down. And then I got to talk about the Terrifier lawsuit because it is so insane. So I got some good stuff coming up there. If you're at the end of the video, you clearly like my content. And I think a lot of you liked my horror content that I made before I made gaming content. So go check it out. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.